Hello and welcome to this wonderful podcast. And today we have a very interesting, impactful storyteller with us. So, Richa, how about this? We start with a quick introduction on this podcast. So, would love to hear your introduction.
Sure. Thank you, Sumit. First of all, really happy to be here. And I've been following your podcast. I love your style. Coming to me. So, I'm a business storyteller. And as my tagline for my small setup goes, which is Tales That Spin, that's my boutique storytelling consultancy firm. We help people tell better stories in business, work, and life. And the reason I use the word people and not leader or entrepreneurs, because I feel we all need that storytelling skill. We all need to be telling better stories, not just to change the dynamics in the professional organizations or the professional frameworks, but also changing the narrative within us. So yes, that's where I help people. I'm a story coach. I'm also a certified NLP practitioner. So I use a little bit of that also when I need to do the persuasion and convincing. That's about it.
That's interesting that you said that you're a business storyteller. So, what is that accordingly? Like, if you had to go in detail with that, so what is that really?
I would say business storyteller means that when you use storytelling in your business negotiations, business rooms, boardrooms, where persuasion is a key and you don't have much time for it and you have to cut through the noise. So when you use your storytelling there, I think that is what we mean by a business storyteller or a corporate storyteller. I'm using it for the benefit of my business or maybe selling a product or a service to the customers. They can be internal or external. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense that, of course, you'd need a lot of negotiation and over there storytelling can help. But could you give us an example of how this has played out? Because a lot of business owners think that as long as my business is profitable or as long as my product is selling, why should I care about storytelling? So,
okay. So let me put it like this. In today's time, attention is the currency, right? We all are living in an attention deficit world. Thanks to AI, thanks to the data. I call it the dry data world. Storytelling is the only way that you can cut through the noise, as I said earlier. You can make your message very, very memorable. Okay, I'll give you an example just to bring it across. Sumit, if I was to ask you or anybody, even on the road, that, okay, what is the formula for a Pythagoras theorem or can you define Archimedes' principle? I'm sure, most of us would draw a blank. But if I was to ask you, okay, Sumit, have you heard the story of the tortoise and the hare and who won the race, who got sleeping, or do you know about Thirsty Crow, or have you read The Hungry Caterpillar, or any story which you would have read or heard probably when you were a toddler, you would remember that. So the idea is that we are hardwired to listen to stories, to remember them. We are the only organisms on this earth which communicate through stories. The earliest human that walked the earth, he used storytelling as an adaptive advantage. So, when you're working in setups where you have very less time to put forward your message, wrap it in a narrative and see the difference for yourself.
Okay.
Yes.
That is definitely a really good way to put it. So stories stick. But I am sure that with every story, you need to be a bit vulnerable for it to connect, right? So then the problem arises that these business owners or CEOs, founders, they're very image conscious. So how can someone like that put forward their side which may be imperfect?
Good question. Before we go to that, I'll tell you, as a storyteller, there's one intelligence that you need to either have or develop, and which is the contextual intelligence. So what is contextual intelligence? So if I was to see a person wearing a swimwear outfit in a wedding, he look like a buffoon and he'll go viral for all the wrong reasons. So the context is very important. If I was to narrate a Shakespeare poem on a TikTok where people are anticipating something else, I'm just totally out of the place. So similarly, what story needs to be told where is very, very important. That's part number one, which a leader who wants to be a storyteller or who wants to use the skill needs to understand. The second part is there are times when leaders have to shed the inhibitions and share the vulnerability or share their failure stories, just because this one thing will make them more human. Because we say to err is human. Humans are nothing but a set of imperfections and flaws. So sometimes, not always, you're right, sometimes it can help them connect better with their team.
Okay.
So that as a leader, and that is where people like me can help, because we can tell you what narrative will work where, how to wrap it into a narrative is part one, but what narrative will work where, that is where people like me will come in the picture. So we'll tell you. Yeah.
So tell me more about this contextual intelligence.
Yes.
Where how can someone know which story is appropriate for where?
So I think storytelling is a muscle which you need to exercise every day. Okay. So just like if you want a perfect body, you exercise every day. Similarly, this is a muscle you need to exercise every day. You need to be sharing stories, you need to be listening stories, you need to be narrating stories and reading a lot of them. And with practice, with time, you realize, okay, these are the things which I can narrate at this moment. But again, contextual intelligence, if you want to develop, you need to understand these three questions. What is the frame of the mind of my audience who are going to hear the story? Okay. What is the background they're coming from? Okay. Now, for example, if your team does not trust the environment of the organization, and you're telling them stories about winning and this, that, it will fall flat. Because first of all, you need to create a psychological safety within the organization, within the team. So these things you need to understand. So what is their frame of mind? What is the background they're coming from? And is it necessary to say this message right now, or can this wait? So all these three things you need to understand before you say a story. So one exercise which I do with all my clients is when not to use a story, because we are all very enthusiastic people. We say storytelling, okay, we'll use this story. Not always you need to be saying a story. Sometimes you have such an important message, you need to just present it and that is it. So that's one exercise we do with people, when not to use a story. Right.
This is, I think, a really wonderful and definitely a hot take, because when it comes to communication coaching, in fact, even I do this with my clients. I tell them that, hey, use stories. They make you more human. But hearing that sometimes it's okay not to hear stories is also an absolute relief.
Absolutely.
Because, when we have a lot of technical stuff to cover, and if it's a big investment presentation, sometimes we need to focus on the aspects that are important to the audience.
Yes.
So I definitely get that.
Yes.
So how is...
Sorry. I just give another example for this. So when we were facing COVID, I mean, we were more interested in knowing the number of cases, the number of unfortunate deaths, how much of percentage. Nobody is interested in listening to a story, because that time we just need the data, because that's a life and death situation. If there is a leader who comes and start talking about stories, that's not needed. So this is also a part of contextual intelligence, that as a leader you should be able to know that when not to use a story. That's about it.
That definitely makes sense. And how did you develop your storytelling, and how did you get really good at it?
Thank you so much for saying that I'm good at it. Okay, so it's been a journey which started with COVID. But I've been a creative writer ever since the age of 7. I love writing.
7?
Yes, I was 7 when I won my first prize in writing. I still remember the topic that I'd written was that the earth is sick and the disease is mankind. That was the name of the first article which I wrote in my own way. And I got a prize on that. And that's when I realized that, okay, I could write. So the journey for writing started then, but storytelling started something in 2020 when I got to know that there is something called corporate storytelling, and it has a place in the boardroom, because generally when we talk of stories, we think of the tales narrated by grandma, grandpa, the stories that we've been listening. And coincidentally, I started my career as a teacher. So that too, I used to teach biology. So every time I used to be talking to my students in school and even in college, I had this habit of narrating a story related to that concept. So if I'm, say, teaching about antibiotics, I used to tell them the story of how a serendipitous encounter by Alexander Fleming led to the discovery of penicillin. He was working on something else, but coincidentally, this was serendipity that he noticed that there's a particular fungus. So I always used to tell them a story so that one, it cuts the boredom, and two, they would remember. So even if they forget the name of the antibiotic, they might remember the name of the scientist or the story behind it.
Yeah.
So I think it came naturally to me, how to insert a story everywhere possible. And 2020, I started learning about it, reading about it, and then there was no looking back. In 2021, I started my setup called Tales That Spin. Again, this title also has a story. Yes. So
Okay.
I feel stories have a power to change and reshape the narrative that we have in our mind, So if you want the world to change their opinion about you, let them hear a new story about you. That's what I feel. So that's how this title, Tales That Spin, came into being. And that's about it.
I think that also works in PR, where something happens, some crisis. I think recently, if you take the astronomer example,
Whole playing.
and that happened, and that cheating was caught. But after that, what they did was they took Chris Martin's ex-wife and made another video,
Yes.
to cover
Yes.
up, which was
Yes.
like crazy. Yeah, stories.
That's
do change
a great move. And another great move they did, not they did, but I think that came was astronomer CEO's wife. Her message that came was again a very, very powerful narrative that came, that instead of being the loser or, oh my God, poor pitiable creature, she positioned herself as someone who's still in the position of power, and she's not crying and she's not feeling any lesser than anybody. So that narrative that she put on, I think it will go a long way for all the women who may be on the other side, on the wrong side of cheating, to how to, come out of it as a winner, not as a loser. So yes, that's also a story.
That makes sense. I think what a lot of people struggle with is conveying emotions in stories. A lot of stories, they fall flat because you don't feel anything. So how can someone, let's say a new storyteller, they're just really interested in telling stories, but their stories are falling flat right now. So what can they do to convey emotions?
Okay. Again, I'll give you an example. I'm sorry, I give a lot of examples.
Good thing. That's
Okay.
a good thing.
Yeah, because that's my job, giving metaphors.
Yeah.
And so every story should have a trigger.
Okay.
That can be an internal trigger. Some frame of mind change, something happened, you spoke to your inner voice, or it can be an external trigger. You met a mentor, you met somebody, some incident happened. What I mean by this, I'll give you an example. So I had a client. She had come to me because she wanted to have a story of hers to come out in a book, in a small book or whatever. So she was telling me about her different nuances in life. And one of the stories she told me that, how she lost 22 kilos of weight, how she went on to a fitness journey, and she wanted that part to be in the book. She felt it was a good story, how she started hitting the gym constantly and how she lost the weight. But the story was falling flat. So I told her, when did that opportune moment came that she started going to the gym? On digging deep, I realized there was an incident that had happened. So somebody had posted a picture of hers from a wedding, which was totally unfiltered picture, directly onto Instagram, in which she was looking very, very overweight. There was a lot of trolling that happened. Even her closest friends, started telling her, you have to lose weight. And she felt very, very out of place. She felt very lonely. She felt she's being laughed at. That one moment changed the narrative inside her. She said, enough is enough, and now I have to start. So the idea is this was a trigger moment for her to start on a journey which was long impending in her mind. Similarly, it's a very small example. Similarly, what is that trigger moment? What is that spark? What leads to, what is that twist that happens in your life because of which you take a particular path or a decision? You need to include that in your story. Otherwise, your story will fall flat. So when we say trifecta of storytelling, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's the end. The middle has to have that kahani mein twist. Otherwise, it will fall flat.
Okay. So, definitely twists are there, but we also appreciate realistic stories, right? And I have a question here which has always intrigued me. So when it comes to Bollywood or Hollywood, there are always two kinds of movies that are made. One is the Jason Bond kind of movie where you're like a spy or whatever, a bit unrealistic. And people love that action is there. But also there are movies which are more grounded, like 12th Fail recently I saw it, and it was a very grounded movie. Nothing unbelievable happened, nothing crazy happened. But why was it that I will remember 12th Fail for life, but I would probably forget the Jason Bond or whatever action movie is going on?
Okay, again, great question. So before that, I will say that the twist that I was talking about has to be a realistic twist. You can't just say anything. It has to be something which actually happened, right? So, and that twist is always there. We are not able to spot it.
Okay.
Now, coming to movies like 12th Fail, so we have two versions of us living within us. There is a version which is what we aspire to be, So these fantasy movies, these ski-fi movies, they kind of cater to that version of us, There's a hero who's jumping, say, 94 blocks down, or Top Gun and things like that, Tom Cruise jumping from a cliff. So that gives us an adrenaline rush. So storytelling, why storytelling sticks is because stories ignite emotions in our brain. So if it's like a ski-fi movie, it's adrenaline. If it's like a movie about struggle, like 12th Fail, it ignites oxytocin, which is an empathy-inducing hormone. Now coming back to movies like 12th Fail, they cater to the real, authentic version of us, because we all have been or are or would have struggled at some point or the other in our life, whether for a UPSC, whether for a job, whether for a relationship, whether for a house, whether for anything. We all have that struggle within us. It is this struggle which keeps us going. So when a movie glorifies the struggle and culminates into a happy ending, we feel we've won in life. Whether we have or not is a different thing. And when we see a person struggling on the movie, in the movie, on the screen, so again, I'll add something. Human beings have something called the mirror neurons inside their head, in the brain. This is the neuroscience of storytelling, that why stories stick. So when you see somebody telling a story in which there is a struggle, the mirror neurons of the listener, they mirror the activity of the teller. So if teller struggle कर रहा है और रो रहा है, the listener feels as if it's happening with him, and this is all scientifically proven. And they also start to feel it in their body, the struggle, the problems, the hardships. And somewhere down the line, there's an emotional contagion being made, which makes this story stick all the more in our head than the one which was, very aspirational. The idea is to make it very simple. This emotional bonding happens between the teller and the listener, and whatever the teller is feeling, you also start feeling. So you would remember 12th Fail for the longest time is because you were a part of that struggle, because of the mirror neurons. You could feel his struggle. Oh God, he's working so hard, living in such a dingy place. There's no light, nothing. He's working, he's failing, he's still struggling, and the interview scene in the end. So we all face those moments. So again, this is neuroscientifically proven. This is happening. So that's why the stories stick in your mind. Because so you can thank mirror neurons, because why? Because of them you will remember 12th Fail more than you remember.
Made me cry a lot because of mirror neurons. Full day I was crying.
Yes.
Okay. And recently I saw a news article that really pissed me off. They took a popular movie, I think it was by Dhanush or something, and they changed the ending with AI. So what are your thoughts on AI storytelling, and is it better than human storytelling? Should we just go out there and change movie endings like that? Why does this happen?
I think, AI is a very good servant, but a very bad master. Okay. And as many technology interventions will happen, they will both have the pros and the cons. It's like a gun. A gun can save a life and a gun can take a life, depending upon in what scenario you're using it. It's not the fault of the gun. It's the fault of the hand which is holding the gun. Similarly, AI is a tool. Now, you can use AI for plethora of activities. But if people have started doing this without the consent of the director, then that's something which is the creative freedom. It should not allow that. But these things will keep on happening. They will happen. And of course, people are having a lot of fun because we all need happy endings in our lives. So people who were very pissed off because Dhanush dies in the end, they're happy that now he's alive. So the idea is AI is a great technology. It's going to change the world like nothing else. But again, how you use it depends upon you. You know, you can use it for your benefit. You can use it for something as stupid as this. It all depends on you. Yeah.
That is fair. But doesn't that ultimately make the whole journey that the audience went on meaningless? If you change the entire ending or you use AI to make your own stories, and some of them are really weird stories.
Yes. So I think I feel more the AI will penetrate in our lives now, more we would go back to doing the creative things the right way. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
I recently came across a community in Delhi, and I'm sure it's in other metros also, where they are making human libraries. So you can rent a human for an hour and listen to him, his story, and share your story. Now, in today's time, when there's a barrage of information, so much to connect on social media, aren't we all the more lonely? We have so many friends on Instagram, Facebook, but aren't we all getting lonelier? You know,
Yeah.
Don't you want somebody someday to write a letter to you? Won't you be happy when you receive a letter? You would. So I feel the more the technology will penetrate in our lives, more we will crave for things which are genuine, authentic, slow and creative. So I feel bring it on, आने दो इसको. Because जितना आएगा उतनी जल्दी हम उससे fed up होके we will go back to the slow things in life, the creative things in life which were real, which were authentic. I mean, I would personally feel very happy if someday I receive a letter, somebody has handwritten it for me. Oh, that will be great.
Yeah.
So the idea is not to erase or evade, but let it be on, bring it on, because we will anyways get over it in much less time and we'll go back to the basics.
That makes sense. And you mentioned that you were also writing a book in our early conversation. I
Yes.
think it was really wonderful, and I would
Yes.
love you to share it with the audience, and it's really cool. the
So
concept of
it's
it.
in the nascent stage. I plan to have a short story book, fiction story, not exactly fiction because these are real stories of women that I've came across in my 45 years of existence on this earth. And there'll be 12 stories, women from different parts of the world. Because one, being a part of this species, my all my love and sympathy and empathy goes more to them. Also, I feel women have a lot of shades. They're most resilient, and I've seen their resilience in places, in ways which you can't even fathom as a human being. So, this is an attempt to bring those stories back to life. Women that I've met in railway train compartments, women that I've met on airports, women that I've met in my work life, women who worked for me in my house as a house help. So it's stories of different women from different strata of the society, but there's one common thread, and that is resilience. You know, how their resilience is actually making this world tick, and how they are actually running this world. Sorry, I'm lot of men might not agree, but I totally feel
I agree with you.
Yes.
I agree with you.
So it's my little attempt to bring their stories to life, and hopefully by next year it should see the light of the day.
Definitely, it will, and I am really excited to read it, first of
Sure.
all. And I think another question that comes to mind that a lot of people struggle with is developing their imagination. I think it could be because of our education system where there is only one answer, and if you don't get that right, then you fail and you don't get a job, you don't get anything. So how does one develop their imagination?
So I think you're very right. I think our education system is totally to be blamed for this, because there's a lot of unlearning you need to do once you come out of the school and probably college to become more imaginative. So from that little boy or girl who used to draw outside the lines and he was told to color the box as is within the lines, we start killing the imagination. We start completely curbing it. thanks to the system-oriented, the marks-oriented education that we have, the pressure of making a career, getting a job, we just kill it. The only way we can still preserve it and do it is first be authentic to your own self. Don't keep the mask with yourself. Let those masks, those boundaries, those filters, keep it for the outside world where it is necessary, but at least don't keep it with you.
Okay.
Take out some time, maybe during the day, or if not a week, where you're completely yourself. You're blogging, you're journaling, or you're just sitting and observing the world and getting to know that real self of yourself better, and indulge in something, some creative hobby that brings that inner child of you out, who's still not, biased like the rest of the world, who's still alive in you. Bring it out. So do something which brings that child in you out. It can be any activity. Anything. It can be talking to a friend, it can be journaling, pottery, any game, play, anything. Some people, so open mics, a lot of people have discovered the hidden poet or poetess in them is because they always wanted to share these things. So thankfully, we are living in a world where there are so many avenues to bring that child alive and out, bring him out and see the difference. The imagination will be back in no time.
So explore.
Yes.
And that's how you get imagination.
Yes.
That makes sense. And I think now I want to ask you, what makes a good story versus a bad story? So we discussed about twist, we discussed about bringing in the emotion. And I'm sure we get to see that a lot. But sometimes we're like, nah, this story just doesn't click. Even if it might be having these certain things, like it might have emotion, it might have twist, but for some reason we like some stories more than others. And why is that?
So if we like some stories more than others, does not mean that was a bad story. Maybe it did not click with you. It may click with somebody else. That's one part. The second part is, in the times of AI, I feel, okay, so storytelling has two parts, story and telling, Now story is content. And we are living in an age where AI can generate content in no time. उसको human emotion डालने को बोलोगे वो भी डाल देगा. So where does your finesse or where does your expertise lie? It lies in telling, in delivery. So you see a lot of movies, we see content was good, but it was so badly told that I don't like it. So I think a good or a bad story primarily does not just depend on content. It also depends upon the treatment and the delivery or the telling, the way it's been told. And third most important thing is, any authentic story with the right kind of twist and emotion will definitely find its audience. Chota ya bada, it does not matter, but it will find its audience. And OTT is the best example of this. You have very different genres of movies and plays and documentaries coming on. They all have their audience. Kisi ka bada hai, some have small, some have big, but they do find an audience. Good content is like river. It will find its way on its own. You don't need to tell it how to go and where to go. It will find its way. I always feel that.
That makes sense. And when you talked about telling, so what is something people can do to deliver? Like you, over these years, you have like a favorite story that you love telling to people, right? Do you have one that you really
I have lots of them, but there is one story by Alan Watts, I think, which I tell a lot in my presentations also. So you want me to narrate it?
I think first you can give some tips on delivery, and then I would love to hear the narration.
Okay. So delivery, again, be authentic.
Okay.
Use a lot of facial expressions, hand gestures when you're telling a story, and be your calm, confident self. Watch the modern day storytellers. Now, who are the modern day storytellers? All the podcasters are modern day storytellers.
Okay.
All the comedians, these comic con artists, they are great storytellers because they observe very mundane things and they bring an element out of it. That's beautiful. That's amazing. All your actors, actresses, your authors, writers, they're all storytellers. Everything is happening in the form of stories. I always say the universe is not made of atoms but stories. It's very, very true. Every conversation, what are we doing? We're just sharing stories now.
Yeah.
So observe these people, observe the artists, how they depict things, how they say things, and then develop your own style. We all have our own style. Just and be very confident. Practice. So storytelling needs audience. You can't do it in front of the mirror. So start with a low risk group. I also run something called a Tale Forge, which is a community wherein we meet every 15 days a week. Every fortnight we meet online, and that's a community where I just keep quiet and I just listen to people and their stories so that they can perfect the skill. So that's one. Go to open mics. Go to any opportunity that you get. If not, then join a small theatre group or something. Try to tell your story there. Or otherwise, अगर कोई नहीं सुन रहा, just tell it within your small group of friends, peers, colleagues, friends. Start with that, and you'll practice and you'll develop this style of yours in no time.
So it comes more or less naturally.
Naturally, some people are blessed, just like some people are very good actors naturally, some have to own the craft, but it's not something which is not achievable. You can always do it, and just be very confident of your own style, because there's nobody like you, so just focus on that. Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay, now time to hear the big grand narration.
Okay. So it's a very small story about this farmer, a Chinese farmer. And one day what happens is that he has a horse. He has got a stable of horses. So one of the horse, a very favorite one of his, he runs away. So the village people, they all come, oh my God, what will you do now? So he said, let us see, he's very calm. The next day that horse comes back and he brings along a group of 7-8 horses. Now suddenly he's got more horses in his stable. Again, the group of people in the village, they come and they say, oh, you're very lucky, huh? It's like, so be it. He's got the same expression. The third day, while training the new horses, his son falls off the horseback and he injures his leg. He breaks his leg. So again, those people, the gossip mongers that we have, they come and they say, oh my God, this is so unfortunate, It's like, so be it. I can't help it. He's broken his leg. The fourth day, the government officials, they come in the village and they are picking up all the young people for a mandatory 2-year military service. But because his son is injured, he's injured his leg, his son is spared. So again, those people come and they say, oh, you are so lucky, your son gets to live and our children had to go for a 2-year. So he says, so be it. So the idea is, every situation can be a good situation or a bad situation, depending upon how you take it. It is all in the mind. The entire world is between these 2 years, here. So happy or sad, yeah. It's actually a very big story. I've just abridged it. I'll share it with you all. And so everything is here, How we perceive a situation, good or bad, depends upon us, not on the situation. The situation is happening just like it is happening. So your perspective, your point of view is what can bring you happiness or sadness. So just be in this frame of mind. Yeah.
That is a good mindset to have, because perspective does wonders. Like, one thing I recommend a lot of people to read is this book called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And it just shows you that reframing of the mind. And have you read such books that have inspired you?
I have. I think the last one I read was same title, Right Between Your Ears. It's by a doctor. I think he's a psychologist or something. I'm forgetting his name. Dr. Sandeep Gupta or somebody. Then I've read books on storytelling. I've read Atomic Habits. That's a great book. I read a lot of fiction also, because I don't know why, but I feel fiction brings that element of imagination in you, and you're able to kind of develop stories or think in a story manner even after reading fiction. Start with Why. Again, a very, very good book. I give a lot of reference to. There's one more book which I've just started. I don't know how it's going to be. It's this one. See You at the Top. Because this is what I keep telling myself nowadays. I start my morning with this. See You at the Top. So I just started with this, Zig Ziglar. It's a very famous book I've heard. Then Deep Work, that's another book I like. And I read a lot of fiction also. There's a very interesting fiction book which I read, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. It's a trilogy of 3 books. So I've just read one. It's about if you could invite somebody from your past, if you can invite someone from your past to have a conversation on a coffee table, who would that person be? How would that conversation go? And will that change the future that you have? So it's a very interesting book. It's a set of 3 books. I've just read one, waiting for the other 2. So
I think this is a good concept. If you could invite someone from the past, and I think that should be the next question. If you could invite someone from the past and have a wonderful conversation, would that change your life, or what would that do for you? And who would you invite?
I don't know. So I was sent to a boarding school very, very early in my life.
Okay.
And that had a kind of a negative repercussion on me, because for the longest time I felt that I was that mischievous child who could not be contained in the house. So that's why she was sent. I've written a lot about it in my journals, in my poems. I also have a book of poems waiting to be printed, where there is a poem written by me called "The Girl Who Was Sent Too Soon." So there used to be a person who was my he was my guardian. So he used to really he was a very hard taskmaster. So if I could invite anyone, I would rather like to invite him and ask him that why was he so harsh on me? Because that few years of my life, they kind of really, I had to do a lot of inner work to come out of that. And that gave me a fear of abandonment for the longest time. So yeah, he would be that person. I would like to know why he behaved a certain way. Why was he so harsh to me? Why was I reprimanded for the smallest of the things? And because that had a negative effect on me, and I had to do a lot of inner work to come out of that. So yes, probably.
Firstly, thank you for sharing that. I mean, definitely it is hard to be vulnerable, and
yes,
that was really messed up that happened, because of course in those times also teachers were much harsher, guardians were also really harsh.
Yes.
Totally
Spare the rod and spoil the child. That was the concept people had. So my early schooling years were very tough, and they definitely had a very negative effect on me, and that I had to do a lot of, as I said, inner work to come out of that and to feel very secure and come out of the fear of abandonment. And I actually share this a lot in my workshops also, because I feel that work helped me realize that always operate from the space of kindness, because you don't know how many places a person is struggling, the person you meet. So that's one. So it makes me more empathetic. And secondly, I'm very proud of whatever happened, because it shaped me and made me what I am today. Because I was on my own in very early years of my life, I always have this ability of taking challenges head on. I'm not scared. That fear is not there. I approach things with much more confidence, because I feel that nothing can go bad. And even if it goes bad, I can salvage it. I can take the onus of it. So I'm very, very proud of that. But yes, that's one thing I would like to kind of ask.
Okay. Yeah. And has this also affected your own parenting style because of
Definitely. So when I became a parent, I had the perspective of the child always in my mind. I'm sure a lot of us have, but because I knew the struggles which we never speak to our parents, and especially at my time, parents were not that chill and cool. Nowadays parents are. So I always had that perspective of what the child feels, what this thing can do to the child. So I had the first-hand information or the first-hand experience. So I feel I was a better parent because of that. But of course, my daughter, who's a teenager, she would have something else to say. She would not. She will bang the door on my face and say, no, nothing like that. But yeah, I feel I was a more empathetic parent because of this experience. Yeah.
Okay, now I think I have a interesting hypothetical question for you.
Sure.
What if every story in this world was eradicated and you could only sort of resurrect one story and everyone has sort of forgotten storytelling? So what would be that ultimate story that you would want to resurrect that might lead to future storytelling? You can think about it for a while.
It has to be personal, professional, like, I mean, okay.
So
Any
all
story.
these, okay, so like all these popular stories that we have today are all gone from this world, and you can only revive one story. And what would that be?
I think I would like to resurrect my own story only, any story from my childhood which talks about my struggle and all, because I'll be able to tell it in the most authentic manner, and
Okay.
I'll be able to understand it in the most authentic manner and narrate it in the most authentic manner. So yes, I would talk about my story, my struggle as a child, or maybe my struggle as a teenager, or my journey, how I started my career as a teacher and changed to corporate and completely changed sides, and how that whole journey shaped up. I think I'd like to resurrect my own story, or maybe some mythological story. Maybe if second option is there, some mythological story.
Why mythological?
I think mythology. I don't know. Personally, mythology, because it's a mix of a lot of fantasy and emotion and drama. It's something which is kind of comforting. It's like that bowl of chips you have at in the midnight craving, So these mythological stories, and they have a lot of good messaging. So I'm a big fan of mythological stories, and the storyteller, I'm forgetting the name of the person who does this extremely well, the mythological storytelling. So, I mean, they're very comforting, they're very simple, they have a very direct take-home message, and they're very comforting. So they're like that cheat meal you have in the midnight, no? So it's like that.
Something to look forward to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Makes sense. And do you also explore humor with your storytelling?
Yes, I do. Try to, of course, it depends. Again, context is very important. The setting is very important. But wherever possible, I think humor is a great way to break ice, great way to influence and network amongst the participants also. And I always like to have a humorous take on things, because why so serious,
Yeah.
You just get
so
one
how
life,
can someone develop it? Like, honestly, I'm a person for who humor may not come as naturally. So I want to know that how could I or someone looking to develop their humor, what can they do?
Honestly, I don't have a kind of a straight jacket approach or some two-step formula for it. But again, I think when you look at these comic artists, they're very, very authentic, and they're very, very realistic, So if I watch a lot of Zakir Khan, so when you see him, simplest of the observations, but his take is what makes it different. So I think just by observing these people, maybe you can take nuances or two from them, and But again, authenticity is very, very important. If you are real and authentic, and if you are able to convey your emotions, I think usme bhi thoda sa humor can come out. If you are able to convey it very authentically.
Okay. So taking off that mask, not obsessing that I have to be funny, but rather just going with the flow.
Yes. That's very right what you said. You don't have to be funny. If you have that pressure of being funny, it will not come out. If you're just being yourself, I think somewhere or the other that humor will creep in, and people will find something or the other funny.
That makes sense. And my final question for you is, what is your dream?
No one's asked me in the longest time. What is my dream? Okay, one dream is of course, I want to see my book getting published very, very soon. My story is reaching to the corners of the world. My ultimate dream is somebody holding my story, whether I've written it on LinkedIn or in my book, reading it at night and sleeping better. Feeling that, oh yes, I've been there. I'm not alone. She was also there. Oh, she feels it. She knows it. Oh, I was not wrong. I was right. And somebody sleeping better that night, that's my ultimate dream. Through my stories. I feel my stories ultimately should be able to heal and bring a smile And if that happens, I would say I've become a successful storyteller. It does not matter how many workshops I do, how much money I'm making. If I'm able to touch lives, and if I'm able to bring a smile on somebody's face who's reading my story at night, not feeling too good initially, but sleeping better, I have succeeded.
This is the best dream I've ever heard. I mean, I think definitely ultimately the best influence is when someone is able to feel comfortable. And in this world where we all feel alone all the time, just seeing that thing and she gets me, just
Yes.
having that one thought
Yes.
in your mind.
You would not believe, Sumit, I come across clients on a daily basis, but she gets me or he gets me. These people are very rare. So if you have these people in your life as your friends, mentors, colleagues, peers, be very happy, number one. And if my story, or through as a writer or a storyteller, if I can give you that feeling, okay, I am there, my story resonates with you, then I'll be very happy.
I think this is the best conclusion to the podcast. And I'll be including the community you mentioned, where every 15 days.
Tailforge.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll put that in the description.
Definitely. A link of it should be there on my website. Otherwise, I'll just see, because we had temporarily shut it down because of my work commitments, but we are starting it again soon. And yes.
Yeah. So I think besides that, a wonderful conversation, and really enjoyed this.
Same here. Yeah. Happy to be a part of this. So was so looking forward to it, and I'm glad it's culminated well.
It has. And for those of you who are watching at home, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next podcast.